Rivers.
Hi.
Hey.
How's it going?
Oh, not bad. Doing good on my end. How are you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. For those of you who don't know, I am SF Rogers, and you are?
Daniel Golden, but pen name is DL Golden.
Well, and this is Author's Chaos. So if you can't tell, Daniel and I are siblings,
We do
right?
look a lot alike. It's the beard that's the difference here.
It's the beard that's the difference. But we both decided this year to write our own books. And him and I have been talking over the last couple of weeks about some of the frustrations of being an author. And I wanted to hop on for this first episode and just ask you, because I haven't gotten to do that yet, what made you decide to write a book? Because I've read the first couple of chapters of your book, and I absolutely love the premise of it. I love the idea. Like, how did you get into writing?
Well, I've always liked the idea of writing something. When I was younger, I don't know if you remember at all, but I wrote a short little story on our computer, and I remember it vividly, called Frigid and Torrid, and Dad
Yes,
helped
I
me
remember.
with that, and it's probably floating out there somewhere on a hard drive that I have. But I tend to daydream a lot, and so those things tend to play out as narratives in my head. And come, when did I start? August of 2021. We were just getting back out of lockdowns from COVID from school and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to actually sit down and write a story. I'm going to sit down and do this. And I have like initial chapters that I wrote down in August of 2021, which are very similar to what I had in the original or in what you've read.
Mhm.
But they've changed pretty substantially from that point. But I like when I
Edits will do
first,
that.
yeah, it does happen. And like when I had a better idea of how I wanted the story to go, that changed obviously the direction of actions that characters had at the beginning.
Mhm.
But like originally I typed up the first couple of chapters and I wanted to test the water, and I'm like, oh, I don't want anybody to know I'm doing this yet. And so I signed into Gaia Online, and
Mhm.
posted the first really rough chapters there and got a pretty decent response from people, because that was completely anonymous for me. In no way am I connected to those people. And so I thought, well, if this completely flops, then I won't have to live this down. But really, I had a initial first draft mid 2022, and that's when I found out Alaya had published her book. And
Mhm.
so I thought, well, I was going to workshop mine around to publishers, but I figured might be easier to um, go through the Amazon publishing instead that way, kind of
Mhm.
like she did. And
Yeah.
that's really where it started. It's kind of just a daydream that's gotten away from me, really. So,
I think those are the best though, because, and I didn't know that about you. So, like, I daydream all the time, like, all the time.
mhm,
And I can remember I took oh my gosh, creative writing class in high school. They had creative writing
mhm,
prior to you being in high school, but they had a creative writing class with one of the English teachers, and he was super cool. And he was always so supportive of us that if we had an idea, to just get it down on paper, even if we thought like that the idea would suck, just get it down somewhere. And at the time, like, we had just gotten laptops at the school. Like, I'm telling my age right now, but like, his whole point and purpose was to like get it out there. Even if no one ever reads it, like, get your idea on paper. And I can just remember like having these very vivid like imaginings of storylines that I literally was like, no one's ever going to like this. And kind of like you, I just was sitting out in my backyard one day and like looked out, and we have trees behind our house, like a forested area. It's not a lot. There's houses like a football field away, but there's a bunch of trees. And I was looking out there and I was like, hey, I have an idea for an adventure book. Like, I have an idea.
Right.
And I started handwriting it down, and Elia gave me so much crap about it because she's like, girl, you have a laptop. Go write or go type it out. Like, type your idea out. And I guess seeing her like step forth and like have this genuine book that you can like get in your hands, like you can flip the pages, like seeing the physical book for her was kind of the thing for me where like that memory of that teacher going, whatever you do, just get it out, like get it out there. Even if one person reads it and loves it, like it's worth every moment of fear. Now, unlike you, I have not posted anything to any anonymous anything.
Right.
The people that I sent my chapters to were like your wife and Elia and you. Like, literally, I sent it to people who I love. And I think the reason why I did that is because I feel like the punches won't be as hard from someone like you.
Yeah.
Unlike a complete stranger, you know, like, because we all know strangers on the internet are not the nicest people on the planet.
Tends to be a trend, yeah.
So one thing that I did notice in your book, your main character's name is Sai, right?
Yeah.
You have loved that name since we were kids because you had a kitten named Sai at one time.
Yes. If you read very far into my book at all, you'll realize that there's more meaning to that than just the surface level. But it is directly stolen from Naruto. And so you'll notice there's a lot of inspiration in my book from different anime and things that I have watched, because that is what shaped my creative outlets.
Right.
Whereas what shaped things like your creative outlets are fantasy books and fantasy stories and things like that. And you can tell in your writing that that's what's going on.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So I guess in deciding to write, like the frustration of creating all of these characters and having to keep straight like their personalities, because like for me, I have characters who are like on the scale, they're chaotic neutral or they're chaotic good. And then I have literal characters that like, I wouldn't even say they're chaotic evil. They're just evil.
Right.
But like keeping those characters straight, like how do you cope with that? Like,
well, with my characters, it's a very small band of people that generally like actually get named and have characteristics and are defined in a way that you can actually understand who they are.
Right. Some are dynamic and some are static.
Yes, exactly. And so for the first bit of it, it was not hard to keep track of. It's like, okay, here's Sai, here's Amy, here's Michelle. These are my characters that I follow throughout. Then I started getting into more characters and things and more details, and like, okay, so I had to start a running sheet of things that had occurred to them or things that they were not present for. So it's not like, oh, all of a sudden Michelle is omniscient. That's not something that I want to occur. And so I keep a running note on my phone of different like things that I have said, because like when I talk to Perky, for example, he asks, okay, what does this character look like? And I have to go back and look at that reference sheet and say, okay, how did I describe the outfit that this girl or this boy is wearing? Because in my brain, they're this amorphous thing that are just performing the actions. And it's like, okay, it has to be something that someone can visualize. And so I have to keep track of a running list. I'm assuming you do something similar.
Oh,
just
so
a character sheet.
I have a character sheet, but I have this awful tendency of like, because I'm a hyper observant person, I pay attention to like eye color changes. And it's a personality trait of mine to like, eye color is one of the first things on a person that I notice. I don't know why. It just is how my facial recognition works. So when I'm coming into characters whose eye colors are like, I have a character whose eye color is magenta.
Mm-hmm.
He's fabulous. I absolutely love him. His name is Purdy. But for the life of me, I get into a chapter and I go, what color were his eyes? I know what color his eyes are, right? So like my character sheet is basically like, these are their traits, these are their personality types. And I think, like you said, because of the way my writing was influenced by like Lord of the Rings and books of that nature, I have a lot more characters that are deep because they are integral to the story. I have characters that I'm super attached to that I know what's going to happen to them, right?
Yeah.
Like I know what's going to happen to them and my heart breaks, but I don't have to go, because they're static characters, I don't have to go as deep with them. So I have like their name, their hair color, what clothes they're wearing, what their job is. So like a lady's maid who doesn't actually have a name. She's just lady's maid because she's the girl who's just helping in the room. But like, I know at the end of the day, she is, in dad's terms, cannon fodder. Like there's nothing, she's not going anywhere. There's no growth. There's nothing for her. But then you have my war boy who is an integral part of like the religion that I've created. And that's the thing too, with my fantasy is I had to have deities because they are a polytheistic people. I had to have deities. So on top of having all of these characters, I also have 4 deities who have their own agendas, or 5 deities who have their own agendas, who have their own kind of omnipresent, right thing. So like it's that like imagining them, like I can see them, like you just said, like I can see what they look like I know what the main deity for my first book looks like, I know what he sounds like, I know his ultimate end goal, like I know the things about him. But if I'm not writing it out somewhere, no one else is gonna. He just becomes this blob of a thing that dictates what's happening.
So you've created these deities, and I'm assuming all of these characters have names. I guess my question would be, how do you come up with your character names? Are they pulled from something, some derivative, or is it something else?
So my deity names all have to do with gardening. So it's about fae, right? Like fae folk, fair folk, however you want to pronounce it. I call them high fae, and their deities are very much tied to, I wanted them tied to the earth. So I wanted them to have, things with plants. So like my deity for the fall is nightshade. So nightshades are things like belladonna, which everyone knows is a poison, right? You hear nightshade, you think poison. But at the end of the day, tomatoes, potatoes, there are several different plants that are nightshades. So like nightshade encompasses this certain thing. Nightshade's partner is the god of summer currently, and his name is Hyalanthus. And Hyalanthus is a sunflower because things like peppers and tomatoes grow well with sunflowers. So like for me, the names mean something in general, but like my deity names had to be tied to their seasons, had to be tied to whatever. So like I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what my winter and spring deity name. I think my spring deity name is Lilicae, which is lilies, which is the genus for lilies. I can't remember what the winter one is, but I know that it's all tied to plants or gardening that has to do with the season they're in. Now my names for characters. So like I have one lady's maid whose name is Odette. Well, if you knew me growing up, I love the Swan Princess. So Odette was just a super easy, like,
I pegged that one right.
And then I have, right. Well, and I have like a shapeshifter, a little shapeshifter girl whose name is Melody. Well, in Fae folklore, names mean something. So Odette and Melody are actually nicknames that my main character give to them so that she's not pushing the boundaries of like names, right?
Yeah.
So my main character's name is Cora, but she has to go by a nickname because when you're dealing with Fae, if they know your name, they can invoke that. Like Rumpelstiltskin
Mm-hmm.
is technically a Fae in that realm. The series is the Lilac Cursebreaker series. She smells like lilac, so her brother-in-law starts calling her Lilac, and then Cursebreaker because she's the prophesied one. I think for me, like I said, names just mean a lot. So, and like you base your people on people, right? Like you have characters that are based on people in your life.
A lot of them, yeah. Amy is a derivative of the nickname for Emily,
Mm-hmm.
which is Emmy, and then Michelle is her middle name. So I've split her name into two separate categories, and
Okay.
then, but a lot of my characters' names are actually, let me use the wrong word here. I always say anagram when I mean acronym. They are anagrams or acronyms for something. Size name is an acronym, and like another character I have, Oswald, he is an anagram for something else. His name has been shifted from a set of other letters of a real world name, and they are
Okay.
based around the tome use that they have.
That they
So
use. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, Cy has a finch that he always has with him, and his name is Charlie. And it's named after Charles Darwin because the book that he manifests from is Origins. So, on the origin
Okay.
of species is where he comes from,
Yeah.
and so he gets his name from that. Um, I have a girl in there named Sybil, and that is stolen directly from the tome that she uses, which is the picture of Dorian Gray with
Uh-huh.
Sybil
I knew
Vane
that.
in there. So
That's awesome, Daniel.
yeah, a lot of them hint at their tome usage or hint at things that about them.
Okay.
And like city names, when I do names for cities and towns, I decided that I would name all of my cities and towns after moons of Jupiter or Saturn. And so
Okay.
because there's so many of them, I can just pluck one
Yeah.
right out and plop it down, depending on what's there.
Okay.
So, and they all sound really
Okay.
pretty and nice, you know.
Well, right, right.
Exactly.
So you have all these city names, and I literally, nope, I'm not going to name any of my face cities. And I think because I put so much thought into like nicknames for the characters and character names that I'm like, the city names we're just going to claim are too hard for human tongue. Like, and
Right.
I can feasibly get away with that because I'm writing a Fae fantasy, right? Like
Yeah.
I can get away with something like that. I can get away with like this city we call the Orange City
Right.
because the name is too hard for you to say. Like
Right.
but I have a soldier whose name is Sarek, and his name was a mix of my name and something else, and I don't even remember what the other thing was. And then I have a cleric, which I talked to you about him the other day, who's named Tariq. He literally has this kick-ass name, but he looks like Santa Claus. And he's the greatest. Like, I'm super excited. I just introduced him.
I heard that was the part you read to me, yeah, and that sounded really good.
So he's, for me, character development. I told Davey the other day, I was hung up, and I had this moment where like my main character's personality kind of came to the forefront in my mind of like, what is her, like, at the end of the day, she's like 38 or 39, been married for a really long time, finds out she's married to a high fae prince, finds out she's a curse breaker. And the whole, like, what is her thought process? Well, what if that happened to me? What if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, you're going to save the entire world in a year? Like, this is on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would I feel about that? And her personality has changed a little bit in the fact of like, I like the idea that she's chaotic good.
Mm-hmm.
So she's good until it's time to not be. And I had this moment where like, I was like, I can get to that point. Like I can get her to that point. Like I understand how I'm going to get her from in denial. Like I am not pretty enough to be a high fae princess. I am not strong enough to be a curse breaker. Like I know how I'm going to get her from there to, if you don't put him down, I'm going to separate your head from your shoulders. Like I know how I'm going to get her there.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a while to like see it, of like, how do I get her from this sweet, like, I've just kind of been living my life, to basically a warrior who's like, hey, I am a curse breaker and I'm going to end this with you. Like when you're doing character growth like that, how do you get to that point? Does it take you sitting down and like dissecting who Sai is as a person? How, like, what's your method in doing that?
I think that a lot of how a character grows over time, for me, is based on where they're going in the story. And the way I write a character is I imagine who they are and what personality type they're going to have, and then I plop them down in my mind into this world and say, okay, what happens here? Why does he do this? When he wakes up in this world, he's this amnesiac boy who has no idea where he came from, why he's there. He's thrown into this chaos without any recollection of why. And over time, he has to reconcile with the fact that he may not get the answers he wants, but he can protect the people he cares about. And I think a lot of it is just letting the characters go where they feel like they want to go. Does that make sense? I
get what you mean. Yeah.
Because when I write, it's just, okay, I will imagine this conversation in my mind and just have it with myself of, okay, how does this work? And just plopping in character traits. Most of the time, my character's personalities stem from observations I've made of other people. I have not based anyone on myself, because I don't feel confident in writing in my own point of view as well. But like from just people I know and how they react to things in certain ways, what they get upset over, what they get happy over, things like that, push me to develop character personality types in that way, I think.
I understand that.
It's just a process, and I kind of just let the story go where it's going to go and write down what I think sounds good, and then I might go back and say, okay, that was complete garbage, and erase it and redo it. But, it's just kind of that process.
Well, and so along those lines of like, and we're kind of running out of time here, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. But I know that for me with writing, if I have an idea, I have to find a way to get a note down somewhere on my phone, on paper, because if I don't write it down, it's going to go away and I'm never going to be able to think of it again.
See, and
do you struggle with that?
No, see, and that's like the opposite of me. But the problem is that I go the complete opposite direction. So I'll get an idea in my head. I'll be listening to a song and I'll hear a line. I'll be like, oh, that's just poetic, and I like that a lot. And I will fixate on that all day long of, oh, I thought of this. I like this scene. What would he say here? What would she say in return to that? And I will fixate on it all day until it is typed down somewhere. My brain cannot let it go. And so I'll lay awake at night thinking of things and being like, okay, this is the way this needs to run. And then I'll fall asleep and I'll get up in the morning and type it out before I get there.
So maybe, okay. And as you were talking, maybe the reason why I have to get it written down is because I'm fixating on it.
Because it won't, I assume it won't just flicker out of your mind, but you'll sit there and you won't get anything done.
But I'll sit there and I won't get anything done because literally all I'm doing is thinking about, well, wait, okay, I'll just talk about today. At lunch, I'm sitting at lunch and one of the girls who works with me came in and she said something to me. And I looked over at her and I was like, I have to write that down. She goes, what? I said, I have to write that down because she said something about the way my hair looked. And when she said it, I just automatically had this vision of my main character in this setting where she's like walking into this dinner. And I was like, if I don't write this down, like all I'm going to sit here and do is be able to think about this and I'm not going to be able to work. And I ended up writing, like handwriting out pages like this, like 3 of them front and back, because at the moment, like I had a spark of like, this is how I want this scene to go. This is how I want him to speak to her. This is how I want her to like come in the room. Maybe the reason why I have to get it down is because I will just fixate on that one thing. Maybe that's really why I do it.
Someone's going to listen to this and just diagnose us with ADHD, but
ADHD, it's fine.
It's funny that you mentioned
unmedicated ADHD.
Undiagnosed ADHD. It's funny that you say that because it's like the silliest stuff that will pop in. And I know we're coming up on like the 5-minute mark here, but the funniest stuff that'll pop into my brain, and it pops in at weird times. Like the other day, I'm writing on my second story now, my sequel to Origins, and Kyrie comes blaring into the living room and just pounced on me. And my initial thought was, oh my gosh, you're so heavy. And the line popped into my head, she dropped a shield the size of a small child on your head, you idiot. And I loved that so much that I'm like, okay, I have to work that in somewhere. That
right.
You know, and it's funny stuff like that. Where do you think the most often you are sitting and all of a sudden something pops into your head? Where do you think that occurs most?
For me?
Yeah.
Oddly enough, so I'm on Book Talk a lot on TikTok. And there's a lot of stuff going around about different books, right? And there's this creator who made a line for a villain. And I will never get it out of my head.
Right.
Because he said it and my brain immediately went, that's it. That's the thing. And it's odd how Davey will say something. For me, it's things that people say will get in and my brain just goes, well, this is how the conversation would take place. So I'll use one of my first chapters, for example. They're headed to the Autumn Court, and they walk up on this river, but it's not actually a river. It's 4 river spirits and a river guardian. And they like defend them against some unseelie soldiers. And how I came to that was like, my pool was still up when this scene came to me, which tells you how long ago this was. This was probably July of last year. And I saw the water, and immediately when I saw the water moving, I said to myself, I was like, how cool would it be if something just stood up out of the water right now? My pool is not very big. Like it's a stock tank, right? Like not huge. But in that thought of like, what if something stood up out of this? Like I immediately saw like my unseelie soldier, my half spider soldier man, getting like lured in basically by the river spirits of like beckoning him to the water. And then the river guardian literally just like drawing him down into the depths, and he's just gone forever. Right. I had no idea at that point. I hadn't even really started the book. I had character names. Like I knew who my like main 2 characters were going to be, but I had no idea how I was going to fit that scene in anything. I just knew like, okay, so it's going to be an adventure. It wasn't until the fall, I went out and I sat down. We had like, it had to have been September, October time because the leaves were changing colors. I walked outside and I was like, I know where my main characters, like I know the premise of what this is going to be, right? Like I know what she's doing. I know what she's going to save. I know what this first book's going to be about. and then organically, you said something earlier about like letting characters organically grow. And I know that authors are never going to understand what that means. Like,
Right.
it's so hard to explain to people that like my character made me so mad because they did this thing. And they're like, it's a character. No, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like they have their own life. I am just observing it and writing it down. I feel like
Exactly.
I am behind glass watching them live their life, and I'm just putting it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, like having that river guardian moment, when I got them finally into the forest, I finally had, okay, so this is where this thing's going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how that inspiration comes, but it's also weird how you will literally like, I'm going to sound psychotic when I say this out loud. I'm just going to preface that now. I am not psychotic, okay, guys, and I'm not schizophrenic. I literally will be sitting and I will hear their voices having conversations. And there are some things where I'm like, okay, that conversation has to be done at a later date. Like there's no space for it here. But there are other conversations where I'm like, that's a conversation I would have with my husband. Like that's a conversation she could have with her husband of 19 years. Like that's a conversation I see them actively having in this moment where she does not know what the hell is happening.
Right.
Because she spends the first part of the book going, what the hell? More than anything. Like more than anything. So in those moments where you have that kind of epiphany, and I use epiphany, but where you have those conversations with your characters where you're like, I don't want to write that about you because I've done that.
Right. Yeah. You're like,
I don't want to write that.
I get that completely. No, like I said, it just tends to flow. Once you get an idea for how the character wants to be placed into the world, and once they get moving, it's like, okay, what are they going to encounter next? Where do they go next? And it just kind of you got to let the story flow where it's going to flow and write down what you imagine. And sometimes it's going to be complete garbage. You're going to go back to it and you're going to say, oh, that makes absolutely no sense. And you can go back and delete it and fix. And I'm on draft 3 or 4 at this point, and Emily's running through pages still for me and finding errors after editing and everything else.
Right.
But it's like you got to make sure that you are just letting it flow organically because you can't force it. And I think that's a conversation we'll have when it comes to the writer block.
We'll have to have because it's so important.
Yeah.
Because if you're forcing it, there are so many like backstories, like stories that are probably never going to see the light of day on an old laptop, like here at my house, that I can go back through and I can be like, girl, you were just writing because you were bored. Like this has no heart behind it. Like this is lame.
Yeah.
Like,
and there's a difference between things you're forced to write and things you want to make work and want to write, because like you and I both don't write for a living, you know, and we are not set on a deadline where it says, okay, if I don't put this out, I'm not making money. I'm not going to make a paycheck and not going to feed my family. But like for us, if we end up running into something like that, you can stop and take a step back and come back to it. But I know for a lot of people, it's like, okay, how do I cure this right now? And like I said, we can dig more into that. But I find a lot of times my inspiration comes from viewing other forms of art. And that's what you said with TikTok. You hear other people putting their art out into the world, and you're like, oh, I like the way that's portrayed. For me, for example, like the song "Dreamcatcher" by I cannot think of the name at the moment. "Dreamcatcher" by Night Argent. That is me. Yeah, "Dreamcatcher" by Night Argent popped up back in like 2021 on my Spotify, and that's where I took my name for my book from. And so you end up with the original being Origins, and then it's a Dreamcatcher novel that will sprawl out from that point. And I know we're having a wrap up here. We could probably do this all night, but
we could.
But we will get back on here in the next week or so and talk more about this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But just to plug my book before we end off here, publishing, I plan on publishing once Perky gets final draft of Coverback to me by the end of April. So I'm so excited. We will have a hard copy in our hands before long. So
I'm so excited. And it's Dreamcatcher Origins, right?
Origins is
Okay.
the full title, and then it's a Dreamcatcher series. So that should pop up on Amazon
Okay,
shortly.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, well, and thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it.
Cool.
Sorry if it's super chaotic. It's kind of the way Daniel and I live our lives. So we hope you'll join us again. I don't know if we're going to do this once a week or not. We probably will. But next week, we'll probably be talking about writer's block and how we kind of alleviate that massive roadblock.
Yeah, and
so,
planning it, we might be more
for joining
prepared this time. So
yes, and it might be a little less chaotic. I won't make any promises.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. We hope you have a great night.
All right.